When someone remembers every single mistake you've ever made, do you actually know what they're doing? Yes, it seems normal. Everyone holds on to things. Everyone has a memory. But behind that careful record-keeping, there's something darker that most people completely miss. It's one of the most psychologically loaded things a human being can do to another human being. And if you misunderstand it, which most people do, you could be walking into a slow-moving trap that takes years to spring. Let's start with what this behavior really means. Point 1. Destroy the obvious explanation. So why does someone actually keep a running list of everything you've ever done wrong? Most people assume it's simple. They were hurt. They have a good memory. They just haven't healed yet. End of story. But here's the thing, people forget the things that don't serve them. We forget birthdays. We forget promises. We forget entire conversations that didn't matter. The human brain is designed to let go of what has no function. So when someone remembers the exact thing you said on a Tuesday night 3 years ago, the exact tone you used, the exact face you made, that's not a wound. That's a collection. If healing was all they wanted, they'd be working to release it. They wouldn't be filing it. They wouldn't be sharpening it. So why do they keep these receipts on you specifically? Because they're not trying to process the past. They're building a case. Robert Greene has written extensively about the power of patience and strategy. The person who collects quietly, who waits without acting, is often more dangerous than the one who strikes fast. Time does the work for them. And by the way, if someone who used to fight with you out loud suddenly stops arguing and just starts quietly nodding, don't brush it off. We'll get into what that really means at the end. And it's something most people wish they'd understood sooner. Point 2. Reveal the hidden mechanism. Have you ever noticed how this person brings up your old mistakes at very specific moments? Not when they're triggered. Not when they're genuinely upset. But right when you're about to ask for something, right when you're about to set a boundary, right when you're about to pull away. That's not random. That's strategic. The pattern has a name in relationship psychology. It's called coercive control, the slow accumulation of a partner's vulnerabilities, secrets, and past mistakes, stored not to be released, but to be deployed at a calculated moment. Researchers like Evan Stark have documented this pattern for decades. It operates through information, not force. Here's what most people don't realize. When someone brings up your old mistake in the middle of a completely unrelated conversation, they're not venting. They're not hurt. They're making a withdrawal. Every mistake you've ever confessed, every flaw you've ever admitted, every moment of weakness they witnessed, they deposited it, and now they're drawing from the account. This is also why you feel that strange, sinking feeling when they list your history. It's not guilt, it's recognition. Some part of you knows what just happened. You just got reminded that the ledger exists. You just got reminded that they're keeping score. Point 3. The power/status angle. Ever wonder why the most dangerous rulers, generals, and operators in history all shared the same habit? Maybe it's the quiet advisor who never forgot a slight. Maybe it's the dictator who waited 20 years to settle a score. Maybe it's the business partner who smiled through every offense until the day he owned the entire company. That pattern isn't random. It's strategic. Here's something that might surprise you. In the old courts of Europe, the person who forgot nothing was feared more than the person who punished quickly. Why? Because the one who punishes quickly is predictable. The one who remembers is not. This goes back thousands of years. Sun Tzu understood that the greatest victories are won before the battle begins, quietly, in the gathering of information about the opponent. Every remembered mistake is ammunition. Every stored grievance is a future move. Watch how someone does this in your own life. If they bring up your old failure only in private, they're keeping the weapon for personal use. If they hint at your old failure in front of others, they're signaling to the group that they have power over you. And if they start writing things down, recording conversations, taking screenshots of things you said months ago, they're preparing for something bigger. They're not protecting themselves. They're preparing to move. And hey, if this is making you see the people in your life a little differently right now, smash that like button and subscribe. It's the best way to help us reach more people who actually care about understanding the psychology behind the quiet games being played around them every day. Point 4. The breakdown/typology. Now here's where it gets interesting. Not everyone who remembers your mistakes is doing it for the same reason. There are 4 distinct types, and each one is telling you something completely different about what you're dealing with. Let's start with the first, the archivist. This is the most subtle form. They don't bring up your mistakes often. They rarely argue, but when they do speak, it's devastating because they have the full timeline ready. Dates, quotes, small details you forgot you ever said. The archivist is gathering. They haven't decided what to do with the file yet, but the file is growing. Be very careful around this person, because when they finally act, it will not be small. The jabber. This one is more common. They bring up your old mistakes constantly, in small doses, almost playfully. A joke here, a throwaway comment there. Each one stings just a little. This isn't weaponization yet. This is training. They're conditioning you to flinch. Psychologists call this intermittent reinforcement, the unpredictable delivery of small punishments that shapes behavior faster and more deeply than constant punishment ever could. You never know which conversation will include a jab and which one won't, so you brace for all of them. Over time, you stop speaking up. You start editing yourself. They don't even need to raise their voice anymore. The ledger does the work. The courtroom operator. This is the one who uses your mistakes only during conflict. You bring up something they did. They counter with 3 things you did. You try to hold them accountable. Suddenly, you're on trial. This person isn't actually interested in the truth. They're interested in never losing ground. The receipts come out the moment accountability enters the room, and they come out fast. The sleeper. And then there's the most dangerous one. This person acts like they've forgotten. They're warm. They're forgiving. They act like everything is fine for months, sometimes years. And then, in one calculated moment, usually when you've lowered your guard completely, they pull out a list you didn't know existed. They want the maximum impact. They want you frozen. They want you to realize that every moment of peace was a recording session. That's the strongest statement of all. They want total control of the narrative, and they've waited patiently to get it. Point 5. The behavioral shift. Have you ever noticed that you start monitoring your own words around someone who collects your mistakes? You hesitate before you speak. You walk back statements before they're even finished. You catch yourself rehearsing casual sentences in your head before saying them out loud. That's not a coincidence. It's a behavioral shift they engineered. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not by things themselves, but by our judgments about things. And when someone builds a ledger of your past, you start prejudging yourself. You start editing yourself in real time. Researchers who study long-term surveillance in relationships have found something that should bother you. The person being watched eventually becomes their own watcher. You internalize the ledger. You start keeping it yourself. Think about that for a second. Your entire sense of ease, your ability to speak freely, your ability to be wrong and recover, built over decades, gets rewritten just because one person started remembering too carefully. You don't need them to bring up your mistakes anymore. You do it for them. That's the shift. That's the cost. Point 6. They already know your weakness. Ever had a hard week, a tired day, a moment when you were already doubting yourself, and notice this person somehow chose that exact moment to bring up an old mistake you made years ago? That's not a coincidence. They knew something was wrong before you even said a word. They read you. They read the slower way you walked through the door. They read the flatness in your voice. They read the way you didn't finish your sentence. People who build ledgers are unusually skilled at reading micro signals because the entire game depends on perfect timing. They don't know every detail of what's going on inside you, but they know something's soft, and that's when the old mistake gets mentioned. Not when you're strong, when you're low, and here's where it gets even deeper. Every month you spend around this person is another month of data collection. They're learning what your baseline looks like. They're learning your patterns. They're learning the difference between a bad day and a breaking day. And when something shifts in you, they notice. They notice. What does it mean when someone who used to argue with you constantly, who used to throw your mistakes in your face in every fight, suddenly goes quiet, suddenly stops bringing things up, suddenly seems peaceful? This is what I mentioned earlier, and it's something everyone needs to understand. If someone has been collecting your mistakes for months or years and suddenly acts like they've let it all go, don't just accept it, question it. People are creatures of pattern. When they break one this significant, they're trying to accomplish something. Sometimes the reason is tactical. They're about to ask you for something big, and they need you to lower your guard before they move. Other times it's defensive. They've realized the ledger isn't working on you anymore, and they're pulling back to find a new angle. And sometimes it's the darkest explanation of all. The silence means the file is now complete. They've stopped collecting because they already have enough. The quiet phase isn't peace. It's the final step before they act. The Stoic response isn't rage. It isn't confrontation. It's clarity. The old teachers of restraint understood something simple. A person who keeps a list of your failures has already told you who they are. You don't need a confession. You don't need a confrontation. You just need to stop handing them new pages. Share less. Confess less. Be warm, but not open. Be present, but not exposed. Because that collection, it was never accidental to them, and it shouldn't be accidental to you either.